So, welcome back from the coffee break. And we are now very proud to have Ola Rosling. He's the head of the Gapminder Foundation. And we're looking forward to your talk, and you will tell us a little bit more about this. So, thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much. I'm preparing the last slide here. I'm the father of 3, and I brought them to school this morning, and then I biked here, and then I prepared the slides. Fortunately, I've done this before. Are we seeing my slideshow? Almost. Is it the mirror problem? No? Oh, there we go. Wonderful. And big applause for Håkan. He's doing a great job. So how many of you responded to the questions I sent out? Excellent. Quite a good response rate. Roughly 60%, I think it was. And 62. So this was one of the 13 questions. I'm going to go through a few of them, not all of them. It's kind of a methodology we're using. Asking fact questions, not opinion questions. This, for example, the global climate experts believe that over the next 100 years, the average temperature will get warmer, colder, or stay the same? And the correct answer happens to be get warmer. Okay, I'm asking about what the experts are saying, not your opinion, right? So, do people know this? We have used online panels with self-recruited but somewhat representative samples of people in 14 countries, rich countries, where these panels are cheap enough for us to do the exercise. And we ask these questions, exactly the same 13 questions. In Sweden, this was the result. 82% scored correctly. 18% are so severe climate deniers that they don't even accept that the experts are agreeing, you know. Then, of course, among these 82%, there are also a few deniers, right? But the white part of that bar, we can talk about as the deniers of climate change, right, and global warming. In Norway, I'm very disappointed. They scored better than us. And here are the results from the other countries. Look at Hungary. 94% of the Hungarians were correct about this. They have very few deniers. You can see there are still deniers out there, and of course there is public information needed, but compared to the other 12 questions, this is an absolute public knowledge success story. Scientific knowledge has reached the public at a higher rate, I believe, than ever before in human history. Still, we communicate it as a disappointment, right? Because it's not 100%, okay? So, here are your results. Are you ready to clap your hands? This is amazingly good. Very good. Among us in this room, we only have 5 climate deniers, 5%. Who are you? Can you raise your hand? We're going to hunt you down. Now, let's look at the other questions. Here is another question, for example. How many children are vaccinated among the 1-year-old in the total world? It's just a fact question. It's not about the future, so the data is, of course, even more certain. The correct answer, let's look at vaccination rate, share percent of children. Since I was born 1975, back then the correct answer would have been roughly 20%, right? But the world is changing. You might have realized that. Today it's very high. 88% of 1-year-olds on this planet are reached by the basic modern medicine. Isn't it fantastic? When we look at the alternatives, we round 88 downwards, so no one can claim that we're exaggerating progress, right? Absolutely within the uncertainty range. How many people knew the answer to this question? That's very interesting, right? Let's see if there are any vaccination progress deniers out there. Oh, yes, there are. Look in Norway, for example, how bad they are. You see? Really, really bad. Sweden was among the best countries. It was the best country when we tested this. And we wondered, how is that possible? What is it with the Swedes that make it so knowledgeable? You see, 21% are aware of this success. It's a fantastic success, right? The number of deniers is fewer than in all other countries. So we asked a follow-up question with a little text field where you could enter any text you wanted. And we asked, how could you know this? We actually asked it both to those who scored wrongly and correctly without saying whether they were wrong or right. And those who scored wrongly, they gave all kinds of sources, like the news or everybody knows this and stuff like that. But the people who scored correctly, 84% of them typed in that text field the name of my father. Yes, Hans Rosling, they just wrote there. He told this to us, you know. That's an amazing, yes, let's clap our hands. This study was done, unfortunately, after my father died 1.5 years ago, so he didn't know it. He was very frustrated. He thought he had no impact. After his death, he had probably even more impact than before his death, because everybody talked about him, especially in Swedish media. So our conclusion is that public education, folkbildning, we got a Swedish word for that, which sounds very German in some sense, but folkbildning, there is no really a English equivalent of it, like public education sounds differently. But folkbildning works. That's what this shows us. We just need to do more, quite a lot more, right? To reach 100% in vaccination. I'm going to show the other 12 questions. What about this eminent audience in here? Can we see your results? No, let's first compare another group of population in Stockholm at Skansen. There are some monkeys, and I don't know what my father did at that place, because when we ask the monkeys an ABC question, the results are much better. The 33% of them pick the right banana if you type ABC on the bananas and give them thousands of trials. They keep outscoring all the other countries. All these are high-income, highly educated countries. How on earth can humans score worse than random on fact questions? How's that possible? You need misconceptions to do that. And the monkeys don't have that because they don't watch the news, they don't jump to conclusion, they don't use these heuristics. But humans systematically score worse than random on the 12 questions that we asked you. And this is the job of Gapminder. We extract not the missing knowledge. Missing knowledge would make you on par with chimpanzees. This is actively wrong knowledge. So our task in our little foundation is to bring people up to the level of monkeys, and then education can take over, right? That's the task of fighting devastating misconceptions. Let's look at your results now. This is a bit scary, isn't it? I think you should clap your hands. This is quite good. In this room, we only have 32% vaccination success deniers. That's more than the climate deniers. It's a sin to deny scientific data. This is very, very good data. What does it mean, really, that vaccination has reached 88%? Why do I care about this number? Well, let's think about vaccination as a proxy of modernization. To vaccinate a child, you need a harbor where UNICEF's ships can come in with the container, load it into a warehouse, a storehouse where you actually have electricity, and an educated staff who keep the vaccines cold. Because if they get hot, they don't work, okay? So you need to keep them cold all the way into the truck and all the way out on the countryside into the storage room of the educated nurse. And the roads there, I mean, they have to be paved, and the driver has to know how to drive. And this works for 88% of children on this planet. The basic infrastructure for modernization is there. That's what the number says. Do people know this? No, absolutely not. Instead, they pick the answers of 20% of babies are vaccinated. They think a minority of humanity have reached this basic modernization level. This is a proxy of a worldview they have where they believe the majority are in poverty, right? So we check this. There's another audience. It was a much fancier hotel in Berlin. I talked after Angela Merkel, and I asked the big data scientists in public, it's World Health Summit. They meet in Berlin and they talk about public health. So I thought maybe 100% there, right? You would expect that, right? Worse than random in the expert groups. There's nothing wrong with their intelligence. This has nothing to do with IQ. I mean, all of you would have scored high if this was only a question of IQ, right? No doubt. So why is this? We ask the same question in tons of conferences across from the stage. That's the only way you can access expert audiences. If you go through polling companies, you can never get these kind of results. You have to be an edutainer to get invited to these kind of conferences, and then you can do secret polling of that audience. And here are the results from one of the biggest banks in the world in London. I can't say which one because Hans signed a paper, but they were very rich, and they're going to allocate the richest people's money across the world to where growth can happen best, where modernization is just beginning, you know, where industrialization will take off. So asking them about vaccination, 4% picked the right answer. 85% of them are so severe vaccination success deniers, that they pick the worst, the extremely wrong answer. They believe that 80% of children are not reached, not even with one injection. where in fact it's only 12%. They have an absolutely distorted worldview, and it goes through these other events as well. The World Economic Forum in Davos, Nobel laureates meeting in the Lindau meeting. Have you heard about the Lindau Nobel meeting where biomedical researchers are invited, 400 handpicked? The IQ level is boiling in that room, right? And they sit and discuss scientific strategies and methodologies with the Nobel laureates. It's a very good exchange of knowledge. But if you test their awareness of the coverage rate of vaccination, you could expect that they somehow would have like incorporated a fact-based worldview just because they are so smart, right? But obviously not. They are expert in their field, and they are the best, no doubt. But that doesn't mean they know other stuff. Why would it? I mean, why would it? There are these assumptions that some kind of expertise spills over to other, like a Nobel disease. Often you hear the Nobel laureates talk about other stuff. And you know that when they talk about your field, no, they don't know what they're talking about. That's what expertise is. But we have this human kind of halo effect of a Nobel laureate or an expert. My father was professor at Karolinska Institute. He decided to drop out because he thought he could do much more important work outside the university environment. So we founded a non-profit with no religious, no political. It's not a think tank, it's a fact tank, right? With the pure mission of fighting devastating ignorance, first identifying it, like with the methodology I just showed, and then replace it with a fact-based worldview that everyone can understand, which means we have to do brutal simplifications. To replace a wrong simplification with the more correct one, you need to do simplification. So I'm going to show you a few of these things. And it's not scientific research, anything of what I'm showing you. It's only hypothesis generation and showing a problem where, of course, cognitive psychology research, real research on why are people so wrong and how did people systematically come to this false worldview. That kind of research I would highly invite you to do. That's why we're sharing all our results with everybody, so that you can start your project without first asking for permission. You know? That would be great. But please, afterwards, when you publish, tell me about it so I can spread it to the world on our Facebook channels, because we got millions of followers who would like to read your article. Okay? Let's look at this little foundation. We're very few people, and I'm going to show the background a little bit. How did I end up here? So also to motivate why am I talking at this conference about open science. I'm going to give a presentation in my Google Drive folder. It's not very usual to do that. This is back in 1996. My father was teaching a course called Människan och naturen, Human and Nature, in Uppsala. He was a medical doctor, and he was invited to teach to the ecology students. And he thought he needed to explain to them other things about human. They shouldn't just learn about nature, right? They need to understand the society. So that's why he was invited. He started then compiling data from two sources. This is an amazing chart. It actually compares data from the World Bank and IMF, GNP per capita, with undefined mortality, which comes from UNICEF. So he brought together data from two sources and created a chart, which he then improved. And the next version of it looks like this. It's very ugly, yes, I know. So he put colors on it. This is to the point that he managed to design the visuals himself. He wasn't very visual, but he wanted to explain the world, that there are not two kinds of countries. So this is like a world map. You see rich and poor on this axis, GDP per capita on logarithmic scale, and then child survival on this axis. So you get the rich and healthy at the top level. There is US up there. I'm going to look more at this chart. And then at the bottom corner, the poor and sick, right? But there are no two groups of countries. That was his message. Because he heard that the students who want to save the world, they were talking about developing countries and developed countries. So he started fighting this misconception back in 1998. And then he got help from a young designer in Uppsala who helped him create a more beautiful version of it. And suddenly the students could realize that Chile is up there. You know, this was back in 1999. 9 is this version. This is 3 years later, while Malawi is down here. The enormous difference between what they used to bundle together as the poor countries, developing countries. That labeling just doesn't make sense when it comes to development studies. Then we kept improving this chart because my father showed it to me and my wife. We were studying sociology, economic history, art, and photography and stuff like that young students study. And we got very interested because the reason we were into art was we want to change people's perception, right? You want to confront them and show the world in a new perspective. And suddenly we could do that with statistics. That was way more interesting than plain art. Plain art is kind of predictable, right? You show some nude person or something and people get upset. But this was more fun because this comes down to the fundamental worldview that people have. When we showed this to our art student friends, they said, no, this data must be wrong. I mean, there is no way, they said, that Mexico can be up there. This was back in 2012. And immediately we saw how their worldview was very, very much questioned by just showing the data. And it comes down to understanding the world based on data. Then I started actually developing an animated version of this. And I dropped out of university. I was supposed to, I'm going to show you a little bit more. This is the background. I was supposed to write a text, which was supposed to be at least 23 pages with footnotes. And I said, I don't want to do that because I want to do an animating version of the world history instead, in economic history. And my brave manager, he was called, what's his name, Jan Jörnmark in Gothenburg. He said, it's okay, you can do whatever you want. Nobody will read your text anyway. That kind of academic, if you're one of them, please, can we talk a little bit more afterwards? Because that's a crucial person in the system who just don't obey the rules, but think about knowledge as something that grows in a quite unpredictable way, okay? So what happened next is amazing. This, like B-uppsats, has reached millions of people, I'm going to show you. Then my wife started taking photos of people. She's actually the brilliant one of me, my father, and my wife. She said, people don't like statistics, so you can't show them numbers. You need to show the reality behind the numbers. But can we do that integrated with the numbers so it's easier to interpret the numbers? And she started a project I will get back to later, taking photos and putting it inside the charts. And we did multimedia. We completely dropped out of university. There was no way a Swedish university could handle this kind of project with the flexibility required to change strategies on a weekly basis. And we ended up doing charts for UNESCO and UNICEF and others. I'm going to just continue rapidly showing the graphic design together. And we took data. I had the high score in mathematics when I went to school and art. So I started compiling data to create beautiful images without compromising the quality of the analysis. And that is that's why it's called Gapminder. We're bridging the gap between the good data and what people understand. And how do you do that? That's really where we've been inventing throughout my career. We ended up doing charts like this. This is the first version I programmed together. Actually, it's the third version. We started programming it so that we could put in more indicators on the axis because the Swedish health system and welfare system started sending us data about Swedish cities that we wanted to show in this way. Today, the same tool, let me just show it to you because otherwise you don't understand the beauty of it. It's free online, open source tool to show the world. Let me just zoom in here. Here's the chart of today, 2018. Yes, I extrapolated the data because most students don't want to see last year's data. They think it's old. So they say the world might have changed since then, you know? So just extrapolating, it's like 1 pixel or something. If you just apply, then of course Venezuela is probably in the wrong spot, but all the other countries are pretty well. This shows now, let me just, if you want to use this tool in front of your audiences, you click the presentation button down there, you get higher font size. You need big font size when you communicate to an audience like this. So you have the rich and the poor and the healthy and the sick. Now we use life expectancy instead because then it's an easier scale to explain. Okay, up there we got the rich and healthy, right? For example, Sweden, right? We should be the healthiest, right? No, we're not. It's Japan. How unfortunate. Let's do Sweden here and see where it is. There it is, right? So this chart we have evolved up to this point, and we will keep updating the data. We're hooking it to the official data of different agencies. But the thing I did in my thesis there, instead of writing the paper, was this. If we take the economic historical data and move back in time with 60,000 data points from many sources that I could couldn't find back then. Now they are freely available online. And we go back 200 years in time to give people a perspective of how did the world change. This is where the countries were in 1800. They are all outside the frame needed to see the world of today. We have to zoom out to see where the world was 200 years ago, because there was no country on the levels where they are today. They were down on a life expectancy of roughly 30. And there are enormous uncertainty ranges on these numbers. But we need to replace a worldview where people think nothing has changed, right? That's why we compromise. We say the misconceptions are bigger than the uncertainty in all this data. And that's we've measured. So that motivates why we dare to do it. If you move forward from back then, 1800, all countries were poor and unhealthy. Average life expectancy 30. I'm 43. I would be dead. Okay? I'm not, because I wasn't born in 1800. I was born much later. During the first 100 years, and now we're using the visual system to see the world. In just a few seconds, we can see world history because we have such an enormous visual machine, all of us. Let's start utilizing it. You see, before 1900, there were a few countries. Sorry, let me just explain two more things before I continue. We must stop there at 1900. I'm going to get very excited now, because I wasn't born there either, you see. But if you look at Europe, the yellow bubbles back then, you can see that they were ahead of the rest, right? And then there was only one pink, which is in Asia. The yellow are European. There was one pink, that's Australia, right? And New Zealand next to it, and that's US. Okay, so we got West Europe and North America, roughly, and then Australia. We're ahead of everyone else back in 1800, right? We've taken off. We were the rich countries. Yeah, how rich were we? Down on 4,000 in the exchange rate of today, and the prices adjusted as well as you can do it. Okay, let's move forward now. What happened during the last 118 years? This is what happened. Did you see the Spanish flu? Yeah? It's amazing, right? You go there, and then suddenly everybody starts dying around you, and then you're back on track again. It's like 1 year of the worst modern pandemic. But school kids in Sweden don't learn about it. They think HIV is the bigger one, or Ebola, because they don't learn their history. So the world looks very dangerous today. No, we're more protected than ever, but they don't know the history. We need to teach history, so someone needs to simplify it, right? That's what we're doing. Okay, then we moved forward. Second World War comes here. Are you ready? Oh, there you go. Did you see it? Let's go back again. I'm not trying to trivialize, but actually, human progress continues after this terrible dip. Look at that, 35, 39, 40. Wow. All of these numbers are uncertain, of course, within a range. But we're replacing a big worldview that is absolutely wrong that people have, that everything is getting worse. Look now, after the Second World War, we got the United Nations. Some countries decided to go another way. They just say, we don't need money, they say. We're going to get healthy without money. You see, they aim for that top left corner, where no other countries have ever been, saying, okay, we're going to go there. China is that big pink bubble among the poorest in the world back in '57. And then they decided to try new experimental ways of developing societies called a leap forward. But it's actually backwards and downwards. And then they go up and say, okay, let's do it in a different way. Mao Zedong tries for another few years and then he dies. And Deng Xiaoping takes over and say, no, actually, ambulances cost money, right? There's a problem with this approach to get up to that corner. You get leftist countries on the left and right on the right. So what's going to happen now is that the Communist Party of China becomes the Capitalist Communist Party of China, and they start to catch up. Look where the European countries are already. 2000, 2010, 2018. That's where we are now. Did you see that progress that China made? It's absolutely unbelievable. From replacing that Mao policy with the Deng Xiaoping approach, this is what they've done. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, look at Ethiopia is down here. Remember when Europe was the richest in the world? It's where Bangladesh is now, roughly 4,000. That's when we were the rich ahead of everyone else. This puts the present world in relation to our history. So we can select Bangladesh and Sweden and go back in time and see how they developed. And see when was Sweden like Bangladesh? Yeah, it's one where we were dominated by textile industry on that income level and some manufacturing industry, and that's exactly what Bangladesh is doing today, right? Suddenly we get the playground where we can start comparing and understanding world history. I'm not going to use more time. This is why we became famous, because with this visual tool, you can actually understand these things, which otherwise is just data and nobody can actually see it. So what happened is people started throwing more and more data at us, and we ended up at Google, because my brilliant wife said, you know what, there's too much data, and we're not even software developers. Shouldn't we just try to have Google steal this idea? So first we went to a lawyer who said, oh, you need a patent for this source code because you invented something new. And then I went to Spotfire. You know Spotfire, the tool for visualizing data in microbiology, etc. And the owner said, no, patents is only in software industry is only good for one thing. You can trick venture capitalists that you got something worth investing in. The problem with it is that you disclose your source code, right? So everybody else can mimic it, making sure they are not replicating your precise algorithm, but actually tweak it a little bit so that you cannot use your patent, right? That's all you're achieving. So we didn't patent anything, instead we gave it away for free. And we thought, no, actually we sold it to Google. Sorry, little mistake there. So today on Google, I started together with Anna, the Google Public Data team, and you can search for life expectancy. What should we do? Sweden? Is that interesting? Oh, look at Sweden, so interesting. The first result on Google today is not hooked to an HTML page with a ref tag to another page with the page rank. No, this is giving priority to statistic results, which comes from tables, because I defined something called dataset publishing language, DSPL, to dispel the problem of public statistics that they are in-house. And you have to go to a website to actually extract it, right? So now the World Bank here is exposing their data through a strict XML format, which enables Google's robots to scrape it correctly without losing the metadata, okay? So that format we invented, integrated it into Google Search, and we were sitting happily waiting when the World Bank disclosed all the data. World Bank Open Data, you can do a search for that on YouTube, and you will see that the day they disclose their data is the same day when we released the Google Public Data search engine on top of their data. This was, let me just back a little bit before I continue. When I was sitting in Gothenburg doing that exercise with the animated chart, I had to go to Statistics Sweden and get access to the CD-ROM that they had bought from the World Bank called World Development Indicators, which was available on 2 computers. Unfortunately, there was a line, and they were closing the library within a few hours. So I managed to extract one of the indicators, but not the other one, on paper. You could print out tables. This was in '99, okay? Then we had money to buy the CD-ROM ourselves, and we took all the data on the CD-ROM and put it up in the tool that we had back then. Basically, you can click the axis and search for anything here, like maybe science. There is something interesting. No, science. Yes, there was something. Scientific and technical journal articles. That's interesting. So this data is today available in one big, well-defined cube of data available from the World Bank, and we have put it up on into this tool. This is a total count. We need logarithmic scale. So if you're in a classroom trying to investigate, I actually never looked at this indicator before now. I'm just trying to show you that with the publishing of data into a format that we can read, things can happen that is very, very unpredictable. Back then, the World Bank tried to sell us this CD-ROM, and they invited us to the World Bank and said, can we buy your bubbles? We want to put it on our CD-ROM. What's the price? And we said, no, sorry, you cannot buy it. It's for free. And they said, what do you mean? We're going to pay you for it. Don't you want money? And we said, no, really, actually not. We got money already, but we can find it elsewhere. We want to give this tool to everybody, okay? We want to give it to UNICEF and UNESCO and IMF as well. But they were competing with these data sources when they were selling their CD-ROM to Bloomberg, right? And they were recovering their revenue from Bloomberg to cover their own salaries. So we went home and there was no affair. We couldn't continue the collaboration because we wanted to give the tool to them, right? Assuming they would put it on the CD-ROM and eventually for free. So we ended up giving the tool to UNESCO and IMF and the World Bank, and they didn't want it because they wanted to own their own tool so they could use it to sell data and capture data within the tool and then sell it, right? So instead, I ended up at Google, and from there, we could release their data through the search engine. And today, millions of people are searching. But when we launched this search feature on Google, I was almost crying because I was looking for all the search queries that people use to find statistics. You know, I was sitting with all the search logs at Google, trying to extract every word that people used. And the most common refinement query, if you search for life expectancy, like this, You know, I don't know if I can disclose this, but I was looking at it, and the most common thing that when they are not happy with this result, they change the query, you know? You do that all the time, refinement query. And the most common one is life expectancy of a cat. And that's not what I was there for. I was going to give them statistics about the global development, and I want to democratize access to public data. The problem is people don't search for this, you know? We have to integrate statistics into the worldview that children are taught in school. So that's why we dropped out of Google. Google will give you snippets that are kind of useless. You will use them to confirm your worldview, not change it. Nobody goes to Google and search for fact-based worldview. Oh, here it is. Oh, I'm going to change my worldview now. That's what I want to do this afternoon. No, people don't work that way. That's why we have you heard of something called school? You heard of that? Yeah, that's where we put kids and they have to learn facts and reasoning and analysis and skills, right? That's what school is for, because on their spare time, they don't do it. They don't do it. So we dropped out and decided to develop teaching material instead. So to prioritize this teaching material, my brilliant wife Anna said, we have to prioritize. So we started the Ignorance Project. You can watch a TED Talk that I gave together with my father. Actually, I'm going to close this one. Yes. Because I want to show this one. Yes. So watch this talk. It's about the methodology of finding what is the big misconception. Basically, where there is reliable data, and all the experts are agreeing, we should actually test if the public knows these facts that everybody in the community think is important. We should test if the public knows it. And when there is a gap between the public understanding and what the experts are agreeing on, we should fix that problem with public education, folkbildning. That's the methodology we want to use. Imagine people don't know what is antibiotics and what is a virus and what is a microbe. Maybe we should teach them that if they don't know it, because it's very important in the public discussion. So Anna said we need to prioritize our development of educational material based on what people don't know. We might be wrong. She was right. We were wrong, actually. We were thinking that people had no clue what the fertility rate in the world is. It's roughly 2.3. Back then it was 2.5, and people thought it was roughly 3. That's kind of okay. It's kind of in the right ballpark. But these 12 questions that I asked you, because we removed the climate there was no big ignorance in the climate question, right? Not that one. The other 12, here are the results from 14 countries, 12,000 respondents online. The 12 questions, how many correct answers do you score when we ask this in public panels? 15% of people managed to pick the wrong answer 12 times in a row on these questions you have responded to. Amazing performance that a chimpanzee can never repeat, right? Here are the other results. How many scored 1, 2, 3, 4? Here you see the most common is 1 and 2 out of 12. A chimpanzee picking every third one correctly will score 4, right? 10% scored better than random on these 12 questions. Here is a method to find what people don't know, or actually where they are actively wrong. Remember? Not missing knowledge, but having actual misconceptions. And based on these findings, we defined an approach here. What do we want to fix? We don't want to fix the decimals, knowing about the different improvements, etc. No, we need to fix the worldview that is wrong behind these wrong guessing, right? So we try to identify those illusions people have of the world. And when 95% are wrong about something, you don't have to take it personally, right? It's not about you, it's everybody. So it's like visual illusion. You should be curious. How does it work? How does a false worldview build up in all of us? That's a fascinating task, and we've only started trying to investigate it in a very qualitative, non-scientific way. But here are the 3 mega misconceptions that we are working with as our hypothesis. People have a divided worldview. They think the world is getting worse, and the world population is just increasing. Rough summary of what we think make them score worse than chimpanzees on these precise fact questions. So I'm going to just look at what solutions do we see here. The core underlying thing is our access to free data in all of this. The first misconception of a divided world, the idea that there are poor and rich, right? How do you fix that? Most people are in the middle, but people have no clue. So first of all, we compile all the data like this. You take data from economic historians who compile the income levels of all the people in the world. And if you go back to when I was born, 1975, number of people per income level in 1975, there was a 2-hump camel in the world, right? Half of people were in extreme poverty, India and China, same colors as before, so the visual communication is very consistent. 2 humps, the rich people want to go and save the poor people and then go back home and have holiday, right? So that was a simple world, a Tintin world, my father used to say. But during my lifetime, the world has completely changed. This data is available, but it needs to be in the classrooms, right? Because today, China and India have struggled, and poor people have made it out of extreme poverty, most often from their own ability, right? And a few, well, 1 billion are left in extreme poverty, roughly the same number. But you can see that. The complexity of the world is in there. In addition to this project of just showing the data, my wife, as I said, she came up with this. She's actually the user experience designer among us. She said, OK, let's instead talk about it as Dollar Street. Imagine a street where everybody lives. You live there and we live in the same block because we have the same salary, right? The rich people are up in the right corner there. And we might be from Belgium or Sweden or Ukraine or Thailand. At the other end are the poorest. Then most people are in between. It's a logarithmic scale of income per month, right? And when you visit homes, so we send up, my wife sent out photographers to 50 countries and roughly 500 homes today. We want to have more than 10 homes from every country to show the complexity within countries and the differences on income scales. It's fascinating. When asking children in Sweden where they think they are on this scale, they say, I'm not the poorest, I'm not the... Before showing them the tool, right? We ask them, where are you? If you put the 7 billion people on an income scale, which billion do you belong to? Swedish school children, many of them, think they are in the middle because they are not Bill Gates and they are not in extreme poverty, right? Somewhere in the middle class maybe. It's a very useless word because we belong here. Okay, even on Södermalm, everybody is roughly in this billion, right? It's very hard to convince my neighbors. Because we're used to being the poor. Östermalm is the rich. Sorry, that was Stockholm context. So instead of that, the world cannot be understood without numbers, right? But the world cannot be understood without numbers, only with numbers, right? You also need the qualitative story. And combining those in a good way, I personally do not think, in general, that researchers are the right people to do it. So the idea that researchers should communicate their results, I think it's wrong. They are the experts on research, goddammit. They should do the best research and keep the scientific level at the maximum. Others should communicate it. But they need to go in and check so nothing goes wrong. And that system, that relation, is just missing. And that's why the public have no idea of what all the experts are already agreeing about, right? Except for climate, because it's so scary. So with this kind of tools, we're trying to invent in that space, right? You can show the school kids, oh, okay, so you say you're in the middle, then probably go look on Dollar Street at your bed. It's probably looking something like this then, in your bedroom. Is this what your bedroom looks like? This is from Thailand, Ukraine, people on this middle income level. And they say, no, that's not what my bed looks like. That looks very poor. Oh, okay, let's look at very poor. This is what extreme poverty looks like. You see? It looks the same whether you're in India or Haiti. Extreme poverty, you can't really see culture when you look in the home, right? Because you basically buy whatever you can afford. No, that's not my home. Okay, let's look at the rich end of the scale. I'm just filtering the tool online right now. All the images are freely available for Creative Commons, and they've been replicated in other tools, etc. IKEA even used them internally for commercial purposes to understand their customers. And that's fine with the license. We use Creative Commons license. Eventually, something good will come out of that, we believe. We can't stop them, okay? So Vietnam, India, United States, South Africa, wherever you live, the beds look the same. Culture is also invisible at the other end of Dollar Street. Culture is almost invisible everywhere, except in our heads, where we think other people are determined by their culture and their way of living. But visually, in homes, you hardly see it, right? So this Dollar Street project shows the world in a completely different way than the news media portray it, right? Here is one person on Dollar Street. He actually falls outside Dollar Street. This is Bill Gates. He loved this project. It gives him an opportunity to visit regular people, right? And look at their beds and their menstruation pads or toothbrushes. So we asked him, can you also send a film where you brush your teeth? We got 30,000 videos we haven't had time to upload, okay? We're going to give them away for free. So people can show reality, not just the news, the extraordinary, right? Here is, for example, the videos from the rich end down, Korea, people brushing their teeth in France, in Nepal. As we go down Dollar Street, we can see that toothbrushing looks identical across the world. Not everywhere, though. When we come down in poverty here, people brush their teeth in similar ways. She's very serious, though, you can see. Yeah. But it's very similar, plastic toothbrush all the way down here, look. Well, if you talk about these people as poor, but the difference is actually down here in extreme poverty, as there suddenly there is no plastic toothbrush. This woman is using her wall as her toothpaste, so this is in our database, this is tagged as wall and toothpaste, right? The Google artificial intelligence could never realize this is toothpaste. You have to be a human to actually figure that out. You have to talk to people and, okay, let's do that. So here are people on the same income level in China and US. You see their beds look identical, right? On the same income level in Nigeria and China. Families look very different, but when you look at their roof, you look at their sofas on that income level, and their rice and their fish, and the way they cook their water. If you went there as a backpacker and you took a photo of this Chinese cooking water, and then you go back to your stupid sister and say, look, this is how they cook their water in China. I experienced the world, and I'm sharing it with you. No, you're wrong. If you instead went to Nigeria, you would say, this is typical Nigerian. It's not typical for any culture. It's on this income level. It's the most cost-effective way. You may make a tripod of an old gear, right? But growing up on this end on Dollar Street, you're so ignorant about the world. You have no clue how the world looks. Still, you think you're going to plan it, right? That's the problem. Let's fix that, okay? How much time do I have left? There is a watch out there. Okay, great. So, very little time, okay. Let's process data also, not just show it. So the next misconception is basically the world is getting worse. We ask people, and the majority in most countries think the world is getting worse. Of course, this is a stupid question, but we should be aware the world is in really bad shape. At the same time, in many ways, it is getting better. Trying to combine two thoughts in your head at the same time. That's the challenging piece. Now you realize the space we're in when trying to educate people of a fact-based worldview. I confronted you. I want to show your results first, and then I want to publish them online, okay, in front of you. Here are the public's results from 14 countries, and here are your results compared to the public. You got 6.4 on average. That was a really good score. And here, 73% were better than the chimps. Nobody got 0. That's amazing. This is among the best results I ever had. So, so how was this possible? Did you actually get access to our teaching material, and have you seen our TED Talks? Probably. And this is a result of free information. But there was one question where you were really, really bad, or one misconception which you actually suffer from. I can tell you, the world is just increasing. This map is the correct one, with 1 billion in Africa. The public scored like this, and you scored like this. Okay, almost like chimpanzees, when you're going to put billions on the world map, right? You don't really know where they are. Okay, you're guessing. How could you get your job? You can't get your job if you have a typo in your CV, right? But putting 1 billion on the wrong continent, you still have a very prominent job, right? So let's fix that problem. Can you memorize this map, please? Yes, I gave you 3 seconds. No, are you not smart enough? No, you're human beings. We can't memorize masses of data. We have to reduce it. Let's reduce it in a fact-based manner. Divide the area into 4 equal size and put the 7 billions there. Where are the billions on the map? Well, they are 1 billion in America, rounded numbers, 1 billion in Europe, including Russia, 1 billion in Africa. Where are the 4 billions? Anyone has an idea? In the Atlantic, maybe? No, they are in Asia. That's where the world population lives, right? Majority. Okay, let's memorize that. The pin code to the world, also in research, is 1114. That's where the research is going to happen, because that's where people are, right? We happen to be in the wrong place, Alaska and Sweden and places like that. Okay, in the future, the pin code will change like this. And the West, by 2100, the West is going to be 8% of humanity. And if we go to scientific meetings and talk to them and say, we are creative, you are not, we can teach you how to be creative, I don't think we will be invited, actually. We're probably going to have to start behaving in a different manner, because we're going to be a minority, and we already are, of course, but we're not going to dominate the world economy either. Okay, here is the biggest misconception that I could measure on these test questions in this audience. Babies per woman in the world was pretty high up till 1965, 5 or more per woman, okay, on average globally. Then the biggest revolution happened, the sexual revolution, where people figured out the smart way to continue having sex but not getting children. You know how to do it? I can tell you afterwards if you don't know. But across the world and religions, they figured out the method. Modern contraceptives are pretty useful, but actually it's the incentive. Moving out of extreme poverty, like this big hump you saw moving out, you don't want many kids. You don't want to brag about the big family any longer. You want to have a small family who's successful and have a high education. And that goes through all religions and continents. It takes a bit of time for the different regions to follow it. So when I ask this question to you, when the population experts say 4 billion more people will be added during this century to the world population, why do you score so bad? Which one is the correct answer? Will there be more adults, more children, or more very old people? Okay, you picked very old, and everybody does. Because we talk about an aging population. That if you're an expert in some disease or something, it doesn't matter. You're not an expert in demography forecasts. So you're going to follow a gut feeling and a worldview where there is more old people, so it's probably going to be that one. No, it's not. It's more adults. Wait, how is that? Everybody knows where children come from, right? We mentioned that. Where do adults come from? Adults come from children, right? Who grow up. How can there be 4 billion more adults without more children? Look at this forecast. That's what the UN are saying. Are they stupid or something? That's impossible, right? 4 billion more people is expected among the adults, but no more children. They're going to live longer. No, life expectancy is just going to increase 6 years or something. It can't add up to 4 billion. No way. What is it then? I got the answer, but maybe we should be careful. At night when we are sleeping, there will be spaceships coming. Yeah, it's really scary, right? I think so, at least. Or there might be another explanation, right? That, well, we asked the public, and here some people score quite good. The chimpanzees are on par with Sweden here, so no need for education in Sweden. This group, don't clap your hands. We got future population forecast deniers among us. Tons of them. Look at you. Shame on you, actually. Why didn't you read the yearbook from the UN population forecast? The 4 last editions had this forecast. They are pretty sure about what they are saying. But the climate you knew about, right? This is central to the climate. The sustainable development is going to happen based on the number of people, and this is the basis of the population pyramid. Is it going to grow or not? Are we going to get more people? What is the reason? I'm not talking about something else. I'm talking about sustainable development, right? This is core to it. So how does it work? Imagine everybody lives in one house, okay? The children live on the bottom floor. They are below 15 years old, and 2 billion of them. And they go out and play. The parents cook there on the second floor. Mom and dad, they decided to have 2 children, roughly, rounded numbers. But on the 3 other 15-year floors, there's only 1 billion. That's the explanation. No spaceships involved here. Look now, what's going to happen the next 15 years? Pretty simple. The old are going to die, okay? You know that. I'm sorry. You can try to stop it, but actually, eventually they will die. There are so many causes. And the other ones grow older, 15 years older, move up to next floor, and they fall in love, they have sex, but only 2 children. And now we're 8 billion without any spaceships. Where did they come from? Very strange, right? It's called demographic momentum. But my smart wife, she says it's better to call it something else. And then I actually came up with fill up. Like you have a soda, a glass of soda. Okay, let's try it here. You like scientific experiments? Should I continue pouring water? It's okay, it's just increasing, right? It's just increasing. No, there is a limit to how many there will be, right? And the same goes with the world population. We call it the fill-up effect. Look at this. 10 billion, and then it stops. They are going to die, and then it won't be anymore. That's exactly what the forecasts are saying. They're saying that we should expect 3 billion. It's very difficult to stop. No more children there, no longer lives. The 4th billion comes from longer life. So let's add 1 more floor. Okay, that's 1 out of 4. We could probably stop that by not helping old people, right, to survive and so. It's not ethical. So let's expect 4 billion more people. Because there's no ethical way. Well, you could promote more education to women, leaving extreme poverty faster, and more contraceptive access and sexual education faster among the poorest. And maybe we can stop this at a slightly lower number. Yes, absolutely. I think we should do that. But if we don't do that, we should expect 4 billion more people. They're probably going to find food like the previous billions did. So these kind of misconceptions were prominent in the public. We didn't know it until we tested, so it's a kind of a scientific method, but we didn't turn it into articles. We just did it anyway and published it in the book called Factfulness. So solution one is to fix this with fact-based frameworks that people can understand, and then the ability to control your instincts. You know how nice it is to eat this kind of food with fat and sugar, right? We have instincts from evolution that makes us crave certain kind of stuff. For example, dramatic stories, right? So in the news, the journalists do their job and sell papers, but they never, well, they scare us, so maybe it's like tobacco. We need to put like some kind of warning there because the consumer doesn't realize what they are putting in their body, right? Instead of piling up a dramatic worldview, they need to be warned. And since some years back, 65% of the tobacco package needs to have a warning with a photo of a victim and a link to where you could get help. So this is a similar approach when it comes to the worldview, right? Maybe this wouldn't be, it would be considered censorship, right? But the tobacco industry had a big time accepting this previous label as well. So maybe we need to change something in how the consumer demand. You could read the book Factfulness. It basically grasps all of this. It ends with an attribution to Tim Berners-Lee. We have defined dramatic instincts, and we have tried to give rules of thumb, heuristics for regular people, which we think need to be taught and practiced in school. In addition to fact-based framework, you need skills, critical thinking skills. It's a list of actual skills that we think there is a way to like control the question your groups or find the majority. The gap between the rich and the poor is increasing. Whenever you hear a gap story, where is the majority? That little rule of thumb will remind you that gap stories are triggering our dramatic instincts for conflict. And whenever you hear it, you shouldn't look away from the news, but you should deal with it, like at McDonald's. Do you have a more healthy diet? It's only when the customer starts asking for a healthy diet that the corporate fast food industry started producing it. I think the same goes with the dramatic worldview. Let me just finish with this final slide of Tim Berners-Lee, who, in his TED Talk, used one of my best slides. Everybody thinks Hans did all of this, but it was me and Anna mainly who did all the slides and visualizations and a lot of the thinking. But he attributes, actually, he is the inventor of the internet, you know, and thanks to him, I can browse the internet here right now. Did you see Hans Rosling's slideshow he shows? And then he says, here are all the bubbles from all the different sources. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we create a linked web of open data? And then he used this slide, which I created. I call it the flower PowerPoint, because it has flowers. The data is boring, it's underground. Someone needs to create a beautiful, understandable layer that most people want to use and have to fight for the sun rays. The sunrise, strålarna, ray, the sun, right? Like the plants are fighting to grab more sun, and they fight with each other. That's the space I'm in. I want competition. I want to build on solid data, well documented from scientists who do the right work. But there is a communication layer missing, where I'm trying to create all these flowers that can find their way into classrooms, which regular people want to understand without misleading them. And this is exactly what has not yet happened. And he's very ahead of his time. He's probably going to die before it happens. But many people in this room are not 65 plus. We could actually probably make it happen if we combat the instinct to protect your data. We call it the HD, yes. Database hugging disorder. It's like when you have your first child, you know curling children, right? You created this child and they grow up. I have 3 children. And you want to sit and protect them for the world like this. If I give this away to someone, it will get hurt and misused, right? And the database owners often say, I'd rather sell it. Parents usually don't think that way. But the database owners, they spent their life, they invested, and if they release it, they won't get any credits back, and they will only get shame. There are all these risk aversion instincts in data ownership which make you monopolize the data. And I think the burden of proof is on the data owner to say, why on earth can you not share this? Rather than saying, why should you share it? No, why are you not sharing it? There are, in some cases, reasons not to share data. Yes. Then you investigate those. In all the other occasions, you should share the data. Okay? And that is what Tim is suggesting in his 5-star approach, that you should first put up the data in whatever format you have. So while I'm getting some kind of present or a flower or something here, I'm going to upload the results from this little study I did on you on Google Drive. It's very easy to share data, actually. I just want to show you how to do it. So I'm going here while you are clapping your hands because I'm actually done. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.